Chinese speakers readers of Reddit, what's the dumbest tea you've seen tattooed on someone? I knew someone that got the Chinese characters that were supposed to mean sky. A Chinese friend of theirs pointed out it meant ceiling. Looks like the ceiling's the limit. A friend of mine wanted an Arabic tattoo that said "ad," but according to an Arabic speaking mutual friend, it says God. Sky daddy. Meaning a tattooed on the side of his face. Didn't help that the man was bald and it took all my willpower to not laugh in his face. STG, that must have been on purpose. A local tattoo shop offered to tattoo on anyone who wanted it, free of charge. It means diarrhea. I've seen it on a few people locally. People will do dumb things for a free tattoo. Not Chinese, but my professor asked a girl why she has love, friends, and cheese sandwich tattooed in Arabic. She thought the last one was something like smiles. Could be worse. Cheese sandwich is pretty dang good. I know a girl who had gangrene tattooed on her side and it quickly became her nickname. Sick name call. Even her family began calling her that. She was a very mean person, simply put, and I can only guess the tattoo artist was getting back at her. This was about 5 years ago and nobody hears much from her nowadays. Dang. Gangrene is a cool name. I wonder if I could get tetanus tattooed on my side. A person from work had a fairly small Japanese tattoo that was supposed to read big brains. He'd just got his degree or something, so this was a celebration of that. A Japanese co-worker started laughing and said it was more like big head. This sounds like Ariana Grande's BBQ finger all over again. Not Chinese, but a friend of mine has coconut chicken noodles tattooed down her spine in Burmese. She is Burmese. It's hilarious. I'm Burmese, and those noodles are so good that I totally get that tattooed. Go try some if you ever get the chance. Pornster Riley Reid has a direct word-for-word translation of "when life gives you lemon, make lemonade" tattooed on her back. It makes 0 sense in Chinese. Noticed it mid-fap and I laughed so hard I couldn't keep my boner. Well, if you're an English speaker who also reads Chinese, it makes sense. I was in the Motorhead region of the metro and saw a dude with tramp stamp white rice. Straight, white and bald biker motorist looking dude. Who said that was an accident? I personally don't speak Chinese, but I dated someone who did. I worked with a dude who had a big tattoo all down his back in Chinese lettering in remembrance for a friend who had died. He thought that the characters said the friend's name. My date said that the tattoo translated to "does not translate untranslatable." This poor dude had plugged his friend's name into Google Translate or something and it came back unable to translate, and since he couldn't read the characters, that's what he printed out and took to the tattoo shop. Not Chinese, but had a girl come into our shop wanting "smart girl" tattooed on her in kanji. We always try to talk people out of kanji because of the potential for mistranslation. She was adamant, though, and had already picked out the characters for educated and woman. This, she said, was in celebration of her graduating with an engineering degree at OSU. We looked it up and found the characters together, but it had a slightly different meaning. We called in our friend Chris, who was a native speaker, to verify before we told her what it actually meant. He took one look at her paper with her carefully copied characters and blurted out "S. Yep, educated woman" had a completely different connotation. Apparently, in Japanese. I expected her to be shocked, but instead, her eyes lit up. Okay, let's do it. I'd like to say I had the forethought to keep her number, but alas, it didn't occur to me at the time. A colleague's father has his wife's name tattooed on his arm, or close meaning of her name. My colleague has an unusual name, with no relative meaning in Chinese. So as his only male offspring, the father had the word "man-child" tattooed beneath his wife's name. I honestly think this is inspired. In Chinese means man, and means child, but just means boy. Back in the late 19th, early 20th century, there was fad in magic to have a Chinese themed act. The whole mysterious East thing. White guys dressed up in faux Chinese robes, had Chinese looking props, the whole thing. There was even one white guy named Bill Robinson who took that all the way, and appeared in public as Chung Ling Su. He spoke in fake gibberish Chinese and had an assistant translate. He was killed doing the bullet catch trick, the most dangerous trick in magic. But I digress. During that time, One magician was in the Chinatown of some city and noticed some Chinese writing in an alley. He thought it looked kinda cool, so he copied it down and had it painted on one of his props. Well, that worked out just fine until the day he put on a show with a lot of Chinese people in the audience. They were terribly amused that his mysterious spirit cabinet had "Please do not urinate in the alley" painted on it. I saw a girl with star sign, Zingzo, on her upper arm. Not sure if it was a hilarious joke or if she had wanted her actual star sign tattooed and made a blunder. She was a white girl in a Greek beach bar, so my bet is blunder. Star sign actually means constellation when phrased like that. I speak Japanese and was once browsing a small town tattoo shop. I cracked up when I saw the Japanese alphabet on the wall with poorly written gibberish characters listed as A, B, C, etc. No one's that ignorant, I thought. 2 hours later, getting lunch with my boyfriend, I notice similar looking characters on our waiter's arm. I casually ask him what it says. John. I didn't have the heart to correct him. The blog blogspot.com refers to this as the gibberish font. Some of the characters aren't even complete characters. My favorite was dumb, but it was like awful taste, great execution. It said very visibly on his whole right arm, which means I don't know. I guess so when people ask him what it says he can smirk and say I don't know. I saw a version of this in beautiful calligraphy on some guy's arm and honestly considering it for my next tattoo. Saw a guy in my unit with Korean tattoo. Probably he wanted to do demon within like a badass, I guess. But instead it sounded like Dur's big bad voodoo in Mihai, in very childish manner. Wasn't Chinese though, sorry. There was a somewhat famous dude among the Chinatown dwellers where I lived a while back. He was a big, buff white guy who would always hang out in Chinatown with shirts that had the sleeves ripped off. He was pointed out to me in roughly this manner. Look at that guy. His name is Ben. Ben has a tattoo of his name in Chinese on his upper arm. Ben insisted on having the pinyin of his name tattooed instead of being given a proper Chinese name. Ben is proud of his tattoo. Ben likes to introduce himself to the Asian people in Chinatown by pointing to his tattoo. Ben in pinyin equals pen, pronounced PHN, which does sound like an Asian feed Ben. Pen in Mandarin means stupid. Dude introduced himself as stupid for years. As far as I know, no one has ever told him. Everyone knows Ben though. There's a difference between P and B in Mandarin. Ben stupid and pen to spray are not homophones. Your joke still stands though, just with a B instead of a P. Source: native Mandarin speaker, currently doing PhD in Mandarin phonology. I love when this question comes up. I managed a shop and occasionally we'd get Nazis and juggalos. At a friend's shop, whenever Nazis would come in asking for swastikas, he'd tell them $3,000 for your chest but $50 for your hands or face, and it had to be done by the guy who was from the Philippines who tattooed at their shop. We had an exchange student from Japan in the early 2000s. Like what seemed to be the height of those tattoos. We were at a New Year's Eve party and some very drunk lady was showing off her new tattoo that supposedly said something along the lines of peaceful spirit. The exchange student asked her why she had a tattoo that said bicycle. Like other people have said here, that same exchange student brought a shirt that said fricket leaves and had a giant marijuana leaf on it. She didn't understand why she was getting stares and calls home when she wore it to her high school once. Fricket leaves is a perfectly good description of weed, come to think of it. A Japanese friend of ours told the story of an American home staying with her and he had all these characters tattooed on his arm. He told her what each of the characters meant, but she was confused because she didn't understand any of them. So he was just like, well, you probably don't have these characters in Japanese kanji. So, she copied them down and showed them to her Chinese friend who simply said, these characters don't exist. Just goes to show you, if you want a character or phrase tattooed, always do your research and make sure those characters actually exist. Chances are the American had gibberish tattooed there, but it's possible to have rare characters that most people aren't familiar with. My tutor had another student who always got into trouble with schools, admin and the like. We are in an Asian country, because the characters in her name weren't in most Chinese dictionaries, particularly gianty rather than fanty ones. Chicken. Yes, I understand that in English chick can be interpreted as a hot lady, but at the same time the very same character used to refer to the very same animal can be construed as prostitute in modern slang. Or maybe that's just service advertisement, now that I think about it. There is a distinction between a chicken and a prostitute in Chinese. Is chicken, is prostitute. Both are pronounced the same, like son or son. My friend's mum had what she thought was her name on her chest. Her friend at work asked why she had population of China tatted on her. So this might not count, but I have a funny story. My family is quite religious. My grandparents went to China and bought my cousin a shirt with some Chinese writing on it, and my cousin wore it pretty much everywhere, including church and school. Then one day a kid who could read Chinese comes up to him and says, "You know your shirt says frick you, right? I'd like to have a shirt that says frick you on it in any language other than English so I can wear it in public." Not Chinese and not dumb, but this reminds me of a friend I had who got sesame chicken and Chinese tattooed on his neck, and when we went to a Chinese restaurant and they asked what he wanted, he would point to it. Always got some laughs, usually got some free food too, like an extra egg roll or something. I had a Japanese friend who read someone's tattoo that said kitchen. Neither of us knew what it was meant to say. Maybe the guy just thought it looked cool? There's a book called Kitchen by a Japanese author named Yoshimoto Banana. I once saw a lady with on her back. I don't know if it was her intention for it to say daddy's little girl, but that is sure a thing I can never unsee. It could even mean daddy's little WLOL. I don't speak Chinese, but I've got a good one. I worked for a stint in a local Chinese restaurant, and one day the manager asked if I could help him conduct a few interviews. I said yes, and at one point one girl comes in looking like the painted lady of a carnival freak show. She goes through the interview, pretty poorly I might add, and when she leaves the manager starts laughing so hard he's almost crying. After a few he calms down and explains that this tattoo she had on her arm, which she claimed was a Chinese poem, was actually a prostitute's list of sexual services. I saw someone on the streets flexing their Chinese tattoos. They told me it said peace and life. It said stupid foreigner. I didn't really want to tell him. Also, I didn't really get Chinese character tattoos. Like if I wrote peace on my arm, am I like cool? Peace and life, although there will be many arguments over which version of life could be used, can also be peace. It means silence, calm, stupid foreigner. Many different versions for each phrase. Not Chinese, but a choir teacher at my high school, which, unusually, had a Japanese program, came in one day showing off her new tattoo that says her name in katakana, Susan So, like in case she is in Japan and forgets, I guess. To be honest, tattooing your name in katakana is super mediocre in my opinion. Like, katakana is the ugliest of the 3 Japanese alphabets, and it's your name. It's not like it's something deep that just happens to be in katakana. BTW, nice nickname, I like it. British journalist David Bloodworth relates the story of the young woman wearing a dress with Chinese characters on it, at which his wife looked sad, which she did when she was amused. He asked what was funny, and she said the young woman had obviously seen the material in a shop and purchased it and made the dress. The characters said good stuff inside, price cheap. My stepson bought an entry-level tattooing kit, spent a while practicing on pigskin, and then proceeded to spend much of the winter tattooing 3 large Chinese characters vertically on the back of his own thigh. Can't remember what they were supposed to say, some simple motto like truth, beauty, diligence. Must say I was impressed with his work. Technically they were very well done, especially considering it was his first complex job. He had to do them in short sessions, as he had to work in an awkward position, with his leg up in the air, ankle belted to the bedpost. He was also working from a full-length mirror, so he was required to render the characters both upside down and backwards. But despite all this, the finished work was evenly spaced, of consistent density and height, lined up well, and all the margins were clean and sharp. Impressive, for a relative novice. Come spring, when it had healed, stepson went to show his new ink off at one of the municipal beaches. We lived in Vancouver at the time, so lots of Chinese people wandering by on a nice, sunny day. but if his tattoo was exposed, they'd look at it, whisper to each other for a few minutes, then walk off snickering. Bad sign. Long story short, he had somehow transposed the characters left to right, so they were actually in mirror image. This explained the confusion and whispered conversations among the passers-by. What's worse, the characters he so diligently inscribed onto his own flesh didn't actually say truth, beauty, diligence, or whatever. His high school friend, now safely back in Taipei, had carefully brushed out for him the characters for ugly white boy. That's actually really mean. You would think his friend would have known that he had bought a tattoo gun and was practicing with the full intention of tattooing those characters onto himself. It's okay to play jokes on people, but when your buddy is about to permanently mark his body with something as demeaning as ugly white boy, that's just fricked up. Not Chinese but Japanese saw a guy who had ball, like a sphere, tattooed on his hand. I asked him what his tattoo said. He told me his story about how his older brother had death tattooed on his hand, and he died 2 years ago, so he thought he should have live on his hand. I had to be the guy to tell him that it was not live but ball. Well, ball is life. Not me, but my father once met a woman who wanted to have bad girl, like as in badass, tattooed on her in Chinese. The characters didn't really mean that, though. It meant something more along the lines of a woman who would cheat on her husband and take advantage of men. My sister got what was supposed to be her initials in Chinese on her lower back as a tramp stamp. This really reserved Chinese girl asked her why she had B tattooed on her back. My sister started freaking out. OMG. It's not supposed to say that. When the girl busted out laughing and said she was just kidding. I don't think she was kidding. I think she just felt bad. Probably, because initials aren't really a thing, especially in Chinese characters. A character doesn't equal an individual letter. I speak and read Mandarin and Cantonese fluently, and one time I was in Boston with my family to visit family and we ended up at a seafood restaurant. When my family sat down there was another family there and one of those people being the dad. The dad was huge, like Arnold Schwarzenegger huge, and on his arm he had a massive tattoo saying, I'm pretty sure the guy used to be from the Air Force because he had a bunch of papers in his backpack and stuff because the restaurant served free meals to people that served in the army. So his tattoo translated from Mandarin to English, which means hit airplane. It sounds sort of reasonable since he served in the Air Force, but the thing is if you were to translate this from Cantonese to English, it would also mean hit airplane, but it's also slang for to jack off. It's not just Canto, in Mandarin too it means to jack off. Not Chinese, but a Japanese exchange student of mine said she saw a woman with a weird Japanese tattoo. She guessed it was supposed to say I'm crazy, but it really meant I'm retarded. Not Chinese, but saw a young lady with an unusual Japanese tattoo. The term, ladybug, has a few translations. Obviously ladybug, but also the mythical night walker. The same creature that was adapted into Miyazaki's Princess Mononoke. This later translation had a less literal meaning. Night walker as in lady of the night, as in prostitute. Poor girl had the word for prostitute tattooed onto the back of her thigh. Not a tattoo but a tie being sold at Nordstrom Rack. I knew that people put weird random pretty Chinese characters on things but I didn't know what it said, so I asked my mom. She said it said blood sausage. I thought it was hilarious so I bought it, to my mom's irritation, and just wanted a second opinion, so I took it to my Chinese teacher and asked her what it said. Where did you get this? It says blood sausage. Being the dumb high schooler I proceeded to just instantly lose it. I still mourn the blood sausage tie. Not in Chinese, but in Hebrew. I've seen a collection of stupid Hebrew tattoos on Pinterest, and one of them said, God, give me brain. Maybe it was a sincere prayer, though. My friend's English brother has a tattoo in either Japanese or Chinese. One day he pulled this oriental bloke in a club in Thailand back to the hotel room to do the dirty. After the event, naked, the Asian chap asks, why have you got that on your shoulder? The response, from FB, I like it. It means one world, one life, one love. AC, no it doesn't. FB, okay. What does it mean? AC, round-eyed C. This is definitely not true because Asian people do not call Western European people round-eye. That is completely not a thing. Not a tat, or Chinese, but a B&B we've stayed at has a room with a Japanese name and wondered why no Japanese clients ever stayed there. A Japanese guest staying there at the same time we were said it sort of meant dirty or unclean. I just typed it into Google, which translated it as mudiness. Still an awesome B&B with great hosts. Pays to do your research. When people find out I knew how to read Chinese they often show me their tattoo of a Chinese character. 7 out of 10 times the character is just gibberish. It surely looks like a character, but with an extra stroke or improper placement of the different components it doesn't mean anything. Now I just say oh the lighting is bad, what does it say, and then just agree with it. I am low-key a fan of oblivious white people having tattoos in foreign languages thinking it's something spiritual or deep but it's actually just a food. I once saw a P-star have the word is tattooed on her arm. That was it. Just is. I remember pointing it out to my BF all the time and laughing. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.